There are moments when God does not ask us to add something new, but to remove what no longer belongs. This is one of those moments. Many people pray for peace, breakthrough, protection, and favor, yet they unknowingly preserve items, habits, and symbols that contradict the very prayers they speak. A home is not just walls and furniture, it is a dwelling place for atmosphere, influence, and spiritual alignment. What you keep around you communicates what you tolerate, and what you tolerate quietly shapes what you experience. Today is a call to immediate action, not tomorrow, not someday, immediately. Because your home depends on it, your peace depends on it, your family depends on it, your spiritual sensitivity depends on it. The first item that must be removed is anything that represents unresolved bitterness, offense, or emotional baggage tied to the past. These are not always physical objects at first glance, but they often attach themselves to physical reminders, old letters, gifts from toxic relationships, items connected to painful seasons you have already outgrown. Keeping these things is like reopening a wound every day and wondering why it never heals. God is a God of restoration, but restoration requires release. You cannot step fully into a new season while decorating your space with reminders of an old one that nearly destroyed you. Bitterness does not announce itself loudly. It settles quietly. It hides behind memories, nostalgia, and justification, but it poisons the atmosphere of a home. Children feel it. Marriages feel it. Your prayer life feels it. Peace becomes fragile where bitterness is stored. When you remove these items, you are not denying the past. You are declaring that the past no longer has authority over your present. You are saying, this chapter is closed, and I refuse to live in its shadow. The second item that must go immediately is anything that promotes fear, darkness, or ungodly influence, even if it seems harmless or entertaining. Not everything that is popular is pure. Not everything that is common is safe. Images, books, music, symbols, decorations, and media that glorify violence, occult practices, immorality, or hopelessness may seem normal to the world, but they introduce spiritual noise into your home. They desensitize discernment. They normalize darkness. Your home should be a refuge, not a battlefield. When fear is entertained, peace is evicted. When darkness is celebrated, light is dimmed. You may not notice the effect immediately, but over time anxiety increases, restlessness grows, and spiritual dullness sets in. Prayer feels heavy. Sleep becomes troubled. Conversations feel tense. This is not coincidence. Atmospheres are cultivated by what is allowed to remain. Removing these influences is not about legalism, it is about wisdom. It is choosing life over chaos, clarity over confusion, peace over disturbance. When you remove what feeds fear, you make room for faith. When you remove what glorifies darkness, you invite light to reign freely again. The third item that must be removed immediately is disorder. Persistent, intentional clutter that reflects inner chaos and resists change. Disorder is not just physical mess, it is postponed obedience. It is delayed stewardship, it communicates stagnation. God is a God of order, not confusion. When a home is consistently disorganized, it drains energy, clouds focus, and quietly reinforces overwhelm. You may pray for clarity, yet live surrounded by distraction. You may ask God for direction, yet refuse to create space for it. Order invites peace. Clean spaces clear minds. Organized environments encourage intentional living. Removing clutter is not about perfection, it is about alignment. It is declaring that your home is a place of purpose, not procrastination. It is choosing stewardship over neglect. When you remove what no longer serves your present or your future, you signal readiness for increase. These three removals, bitterness, ungodly influence, and disorder, are not random. They represent the heart, the spirit, and the environment. When all three are addressed, transformation accelerates, peace returns, joy becomes lighter, prayer becomes stronger, your home shifts from being a place you survive in to a place you thrive in. Do not underestimate how much your environment influences your faith. Many people fast and pray while living in atmospheres that contradict what they are asking God to do. God honors faith, but He also honors obedience. When you take responsibility for what you can control, God moves powerfully in what you cannot. This is why the instruction is urgent. Immediately, not after another argument, not after another sleepless night, not after another season of delay. Remove these things now. You are not losing anything valuable. You are gaining peace, clarity, and alignment. You are making space for God to move freely. Your home is meant to be a place of rest, safety, and renewal. It should strengthen you, not drain you. It should inspire faith, not anxiety. It should reflect hope, not heaviness. When you remove what opposes that purpose, you partner with God in creating a dwelling where His presence is welcome. This is not about fear. It is about freedom. Freedom from emotional chains. Freedom from spiritual interference. Freedom from mental clutter. And freedom always requires a decision. Today is that decision. Stand up, walk through your home with discernment, and be honest. Ask yourself what no longer belongs. Ask yourself what no longer aligns. Ask yourself what you have tolerated that has quietly cost you peace. Then act, remove it, release it. Let it go. When you do, you will feel the shift, not because of superstition, but because obedience always produces fruit. Your home depends on it. And so does the future you are praying for. What you allow to remain in your home silently shapes your spiritual atmosphere, either inviting peace and God's presence, or allowing confusion, fear, and stagnation to linger. Nothing in a home is ever neutral. Even the things you no longer notice are still speaking, still influencing, still setting a tone. Long before words are spoken, before prayers are lifted, before decisions are made, the atmosphere has already begun to shape the heart. A home absorbs what is permitted within it, and over time, it reflects that permission back into your thoughts, your emotions, and your faith. Peace does not enter a home by accident. It is cultivated. It grows where intention, obedience, and awareness are present. When God's presence is welcomed, it brings rest that cannot be manufactured and clarity that cannot be taught. But when confusion is tolerated, when fear is entertained, when stagnation is accepted as normal, the atmosphere slowly shifts, not in dramatic ways at first, but in subtle ones. Restlessness at night, irritability without reason, heaviness that lingers even in moments of silence. These are often signs not of external attack, but of internal permission. Many people pray for breakthrough while unknowingly housing the very things that resist it. They ask God to fill their home with peace, yet allow chaos to remain untouched. They ask for spiritual growth, yet surround themselves with influences that numb discernment and dull hunger for God. Over time, the heart adapts to the environment, and faith begins to feel harder than it should. Not because God has withdrawn, but because the atmosphere has become crowded. God's presence thrives in spaces where He is honored, where alignment replaces compromise, and where obedience is valued more than comfort. When your home reflects your faith, it becomes a place of refuge, a sanctuary where burdens are lifted and strength is renewed. But when your home reflects fear, unresolved pain, or spiritual neglect, it quietly reinforces those same patterns in your life. Children sense it. Relationships are shaped by it. Even your private moments with God are affected by it. This is why awareness matters. What you allow to remain is not just a personal preference, it is a spiritual decision. Every item, every influence, every unresolved issue either agrees with God's peace or competes against it. And whatever remains long enough eventually establishes residence in the atmosphere of your home. When you choose to remove what disrupts peace, you are not being extreme, you are being intentional. You are declaring that your home is a place where God's presence is welcome, where fear has no authority, and where stagnation has no permission to stay. The moment you take responsibility for your atmosphere is the moment transformation begins. Peace flows more freely. Faith rises more naturally. And your home becomes not just a place you live in, but a place where God is honored and His presence can rest. Removal is not about superstition, but obedience, aligning your physical environment with spiritual truth so faith can breathe freely. This is where many people misunderstand the instruction. They assume that removing certain things from their home is rooted in fear or ritual, when in reality it is rooted in alignment. Obedience is not driven by anxiety, it is motivated by trust. It is the quiet confidence that when God gives direction, even in practical matters, that direction carries wisdom and protection. Superstition tries to control outcomes through objects. Obedience, however, responds to God's voice with action. When God prompts removal, he is not threatened by objects, he is concerned with influence. He understands how environments shape hearts and how what surrounds you can either support or suffocate your faith. Just as weeds choke the life out of a healthy garden, misaligned influences can slowly restrict spiritual growth, not through force, but through constant pressure. Faith needs room to breathe. It flourishes in spaces where truth is reinforced rather than contradicted. When your surroundings consistently oppose what you believe, your spirit feels tension. You may still love God, still pray, still desire growth, yet feel an unexplainable heaviness. That heaviness is often the result of living with contradictions, declaring faith while tolerating environments that quietly undermine it. Aligning your physical space with spiritual truth is an act of integrity. It is choosing to live consistently, not compartmentalizing faith to certain moments while ignoring it in daily life. Your home becomes an extension of your values, not a contradiction of them. When obedience replaces compromise, clarity increases. When clarity increases, faith strengthens. And when faith strengthens, peace follows. This kind of removal is not dramatic, but it is powerful. It is a statement that says, I trust God enough to let go of what He says no longer serves me. It is a refusal to cling to what feels familiar but hinders growth. Obedience always creates space for healing, space for renewal, and space for God's presence to move without resistance. When your environment agrees with your faith, spiritual practices no longer feel forced. Prayer becomes lighter. Worship becomes more natural. Discernment becomes sharper. Not because you did something mystical, but because you chose alignment. Obedience removes obstacles that were never meant to stay, allowing faith to function freely, fully, and without restraint. Transformation begins when discernment leads to action, and action creates space for God to restore order, blessing, and peace. Discernment on its own is not enough. Many people recognize what is wrong, unhealthy, or misaligned, yet remain unchanged because recognition never turns into obedience. Discernment is a gift, but action is the proof that the gift has been received. When God reveals what needs to change, He is inviting participation, not just awareness. True transformation is never passive. It requires movement, decision, and courage. The moment you act on discernment, you break agreement with stagnation. You stop merely feeling conviction and begin responding to it. This is where spiritual shifts happen, not in intention, but in execution. Action is the bridge between revelation and restoration. Without it, even the clearest insight remains powerless. When action is taken, space is created. Space in the physical sense, space in the emotional sense, and space in the spiritual sense. God moves freely where room has been made. He restores order where confusion once lived. He replaces heaviness with peace and disorder with clarity. Blessing flows most easily where resistance has been removed, not because God is limited, but because alignment has been established. Order is not control, it is harmony. Peace is not the absence of struggle, it is the presence of trust. Blessing is not merely material, it is the settled confidence that God is actively involved in your life. All three begin to reappear when you respond to discernment with decisive action. What once felt overwhelming begins to feel manageable. What once felt stuck begins to move again. This process also builds spiritual confidence. Each act of obedience strengthens your ability to trust God further. Each step of action sharpens discernment for the next step. Momentum replaces delay. Faith becomes active rather than theoretical. And as alignment increases, God's restoration becomes evident, not just internally, but visibly. Transformation is not a single dramatic moment, it is a series of obedient responses. When you act on what God reveals, you invite Him to do what only He can. He restores what was neglected, heals what was fractured, and establishes peace where chaos once ruled. Discernment opens your eyes, action opens the door, and God steps in to complete the work.